So welcome everyone to yet another online seminar organized by EHPA. This time it has been organized with colleagues from a lot of other organizations, projects and regions. And also I'm very glad to mention that this event is an official partner of the EU in Week. Can I pass the next slide, please? Today we have a long program of 2 hours 30, but it's filled up with very interesting presentations, I promise. And hopefully we will have also very fruitful discussions as well. So now it's your time. Grab your coffee, grab your tea, grab your bottle of water, stretch a bit, maybe a snack, and let's enjoy together. First of all, well, you know, I'm Irene Offsite and I'm presenting this. Let's say I'm the facilitator of this event. Then we will have a keynote speech by Frédéric Boyer, a panel discussion on highly ambitious regions, then a lovely presentation by the European Investment Bank on how they can support your region in implementing a one-stop shop. We will proceed with a series of project examples on renovation and one-stop shops, and then we will end up with some closing remarks by Daniela Wagner. So, next slide, please. So before we start, just a little remark. If you have questions during the webinar, no problem. You can write them in the chat, which you can find, I guess, in the line below. If you have a question, write it there, but indicate the name of the speaker so the speaker can know it's directed to them, or the moderator of the session can indicate the speaker, like the question you have asked. Then just a tip, mostly for the panel discussions, like in the top line on Zoom, there's the option of view. You can select gallery view and you can see like all the speakers that are involved on the session. So yeah, like let's start with this. The first speaker that we have today is Frédéric Boyer. He joined Energy Cities in 2009 because it was the perfect match for him to conciliate cities with the energy transition, a sector he has background in and he's very interested. He has been heading the Covenant of Mayors office since 2015, and there he has the opportunity to engage and support cities on one hand, and on the other to advocate for an enabling legislative and financial framework together with his policy colleagues. So Frédéric, the floor is yours. It's your time to shine.
Sorry, I was looking for to unmute my microphone. So good morning, everyone. A real pleasure to be with you and kicking off this discussion on how cities and regions can bring Europe to climate neutrality. First, a big thanks to EHPA and to the other partners for setting up such a dialogue and discussion and promotion of good practices of regions and cities. I want to quickly go, if I manage to change the slides, I'm going to try. Yeah, it works. A quick flashback on the Covenant of Mayors that probably some of you know, particularly those representing cities here. We started 2009 with a big ceremony in February where 400 cities came and joined the initiative to reach the 320. At that time, we were talking about 20% greenhouse gas emissions by 2020, renewable energy and also energy efficiency. Then the initiative grew a lot. We added to mitigation the adaptation pillar and also energy poverty. We also had a geographical extension of the covenant, and I think that's very important to notice. The way of cooperation between the European Commission and cities and region for energy and climate was also a way for Europe to support development in other countries or decentralization in other countries. And that's why the covenant was used as a model for that. And then, well, the initiative has been following the EU framework. So the 2030 with the 40% initially, and more recently, April 2021, we completely revised the political commitment document to include climate neutrality by 2050, to include the new targets by 2030 into the covenant, and which are currently also being, for some of them, being revised. And another element I wanted to put here with regard to climate neutrality is the launch some weeks ago, the selection of the 100 climate neutral cities, climate neutral and smart cities, a new initiative of the European Commission that clearly show the importance the EU is giving to local authorities when it comes to bringing climate neutrality and resilience to climate change. So that's a huge progress we've been noticing since, I've been noticing since I started in 2009. A lot of attention given to local authorities as key allies of the decarbonization and bringing resilience in our territories. And that's been also backed up by specific earmarking, and actually, one of the projects you're discussing today, so specific earmarking of EU programs, Horizon Europe, LIFE, but also the cohesion policy to support local authorities in their transition. So those are very important elements that it's worth noticing. But now the context has been in the last 10 months, let's say, evolving a lot. With the energy crisis, obviously, with the war against Ukraine, which is impacting, not only Polish cities like Warsaw that has to welcome a lot of refugees, but every city, because they have energy bills to pay, because they have to look after energy vulnerable people whose number is growing day by day with the price of gas and electricity that in most EU countries we saw increasing drastically in the last few weeks or months. So that led, as you probably know, the European Commission to adopt some days ago, last week on the 18th of May, the Repower EU, in order to try to become more independent from Russian energy. And this is also an important element to mention in terms of again, cooperation or relation between local and regional authorities and the Commission. With the current crisis, of course, the Commission is very busy, as you know, negotiating energy provision from other countries, LNG and so on. But it also looks into two other main priorities. First, it's energy savings, and then it's accelerating the deployment of renewable energy. And nowhere than in regions and cities this can happen fast. So that's a very important element. I guess you will talk a lot today when referring to the deep renovation of the building stock. So those are important things to take into account. And one could say that the current crisis could put away the priority to go to climate neutrality. There's this risk because we have a lot of crises to address. The pandemic, we were just talking between the speakers about that before. The refugee that are coming in the neighboring countries of Ukraine, the energy crisis, and also the climate crisis. And recently, we've been bringing the board of the Covenant of Mayors to discuss with the Vice President Timmermans and the Commissioner Simpson. And what I really liked about the mayors, they were really, one, presenting themselves as the key allies of the European Commission. And secondly, insisting on the fact that we need to stay very ambitious on climate, because that's the way to address in a synergy way the multiple crises we are facing at the moment. And again, to work in synergy, then you need to go local, because you cannot do it from an EU very silo approach. So again, bringing a lot of attention to what cities can do. But since the current situation makes it, and I guess as experts, you're noticing that the energy price and everything makes the investment capacities, the availability of raw materials, the availability of the workforce very, very difficult to find, leading all those projects of renovation of the building, deployment of renewable energy, constraints. So local authorities have difficulty to invest in the green energy transition we've been promoting for years. And that's why we decided, together with the European Commission, with the support of the Committee of the Regions, to launch this Cities Energy Savings Sprint. So this is not the sufficiency, the happy sufficiency. We have in French this la frugalité heureuse, happy frugality. Or this is not what we're selling here. We're really insisting on the fact that we're facing a situation of war in Ukraine, a big crisis in Europe around energy, and it is necessary to take very emergent measures in order to reduce the energy consumption, to avoid energy consumption. So we launched that on the 19th of May with the support of Commissioner Simpson, and we are encouraging cities to take, again, urgent measures in order to cut the energy consumption in their buildings, in their public fleet, but also to engage the citizens, to discuss with them and to explain them why we need to take such measures and that they can do the same in their home. We've been collecting a series of examples. I don't want to enter into the detail, but I mean, you can already anticipate the type of measures cities can take with no additional cost, like adjusting the temperature in public buildings. The city of Amsterdam, when it was still cold, reduced from 21 to 18 degrees in the public building temperature. The city of Brussels did the same. Now we're entering the spring and summer period, so we could adjust the temperature in the other way so that we can save energy. On public transport, again, encouraging public transport, organizing car-free days. There are many things that cities can do to directly save energy. And again, an important element, engaging the citizens into that so that they do the same in their homes and that they understand those, let's say, forced sufficiency measures, which can be obviously very unpopular. So, well, I'm using this opportunity to promote this campaign to you. You can join it, you can find all the information on the slide. And also some examples and quotes we have collected from cities already engaged. But this is not enough. I mean, this is again an emergency situation that we are trying to address with that in solidarity with Ukraine, but also to prepare for the next winter. But that's clearly not enough to drive the transition to climate neutrality. And that's why the Board of the Covenant, where we have mayors of different countries, exchanging with the European institutions, they've submitted a proposal that you can normally there should be a link here under the slide to try to change the way the EU policy is made at the moment and really to empower the cities to drive their transition. There are a series of obstacles. I don't have time to enter into the details, but when we look at them, it's less the EU legislation, which is quite actually supporting the transition of cities, than obstacles that we can identify at member states level. And there are some member states where it's even harder than in others. So, but basically, the more you have a decentralized country, the highest and the most successful the transition to climate neutrality is. That's why, not surprisingly, when you look at, just to give an example of one of the mayors who was attending the meetings, the mayor of Lahti in Finland, he's aiming at climate neutrality by 2025. And he is convinced, despite the crisis that we are facing at the moment, that he can make it. The mayor of La Piranta was explaining that despite the cut of electricity from Russia to Finland in the last month, he managed not to be impacted because he had been investing for 20 years in La Piranta, and they have their own production of electricity. German mayors were saying, look, we have our local energy company, so we can decide on how we green our energy and the price we affect to it. So again, giving power, the devolution of competences to local authorities is very important. And this is one of the key elements that the mayors have been repeating. And trying to link it to very concrete legislative measures of the Commission. And for instance, the Energy Union governance. You probably know that the member states will have to prepare new national energy climate plan, the draft by June 2023 and the final one by 2024. And we have this room of opportunity to influence that and to use the local action plan and regional action plan of cities and regions and feed the national climate action plan that member states have to do. So that's one of the key elements, devolution of power. The second key element is the funding. That's obvious, to trigger financing from the private sector. And there again, member states very often appear as obstacle. And there was a point made by Rafał Trzaskowski, the mayor of Warsaw, who unfortunately with a government which is in the opposition has a lot of difficulty to get his project finance. So how to better earmark money for the transition of cities and regions, and then how to ensure that the money goes to them. So that was also a very important element. And finally, the question of capacities of cities. And by that, I mean the human capacity that local authorities can invest into the transition. And it's not only a question of energy managers, and probably today there are many energy managers of cities that are participating, because you know how to renovate buildings, you know how much you need to invest to make a new renewable energy power station. The level of ambition we are having when we talk about climate neutrality, and anyway, the urgency we have to take action also require that we engage the citizens into the transition and the local stakeholders. And that's not an energy manager who is responsible for that. That's new competences that we need to bring into local authorities. Some of them have been very innovative and have been developing this approach for already some years. I could quote the city of Leuven in Belgium, who has developed a specific NGO. And there is a share of power between the academia, the local authority, the business, and the citizens in order to drive the transition. So those new models of local governance are very important. They are actually part of the covenant. This is a commitment we are asking them to do, to engage the community and create a kind of local climate pact. But that requires new competences and new staff. And this is why, with other EU networks of cities, we have launched this new campaign, yet another campaign that I will be inviting you to support, which is calling for more local staff for the climate. And we base this campaign on a study. I'm just trying to move to the next slide, but on a study that shows that we would need in the next years, if someone can help me, because I don't have the small arrow anymore on my screen, to move to the next slide, we would have 2.5, we would need 2.5 staff per city in Europe to drive the transition. And we have around 120 or 30,000 local authorities in Europe. So you can understand that that's a huge amount of people we need to hire in the coming years. The arrow is back, but the slide doesn't move. So if anyone can help me with that, luckily I printed my slides, so I can at least. That was clearly the slide showing the need for additional staff, and the study is available again on a click by clicking on the slide that you will receive. And I hope you can join, again, support this campaign. There's a manifesto for that. We want to use that again to advocate to the European Commission the need to give them the capacities to act for that transition. They are the key allies of the Commission when it comes to bringing climate neutrality. But for that, they need, one, the competence in the sense of having the power to decide on energy and climate policies at local level. Two, they need the money. And three, they need the people to drive the transition. And with that, I will conclude my presentation. Thank you very much for the attention. I'm happy to respond to the questions before having to leave you because I have another presentation to make before 11 o'clock. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Frederic. I'm sorry that we had this technical problem with the slides, but of course, I invite you all to check the campaigns that he has presented. So the City Energy Saving Sprint, as well as the I'm sorry, I cannot remember the name right now because I'm slightly nervous. But
the local staff for climate. That's perfect. The second. So, that's the second.
We will share the slides today. Well, done today, most likely tomorrow, so you can check them all and of course engage on the campaigns. And now we have to move to the next session. The ambitious region session, and for that I need to present the moderator, which is Seamus Hoyne. Seamus has been involved in the energy sector for over 25 years. He has worked in local, regional level as the managing director of the Tipperary Energy Agency in Ireland. Since 2018, he has been Secretary General of Federing, one of the organizers of this event. And he works closely with regions and energy agencies across Europe on the energy transition. From 2017, he has been development manager in the previously known Limerick Institute of Technology, currently known as Technology University of the Shannon. And since January 2021, he took up the role of Dean of Flexible and Work-Based Learning there. He also established the Sustainable Development Research Institute, of which he is the principal investigator. So I will let you now do the talking as Seamus, and good luck with this wonderful session we have ahead.
Great, thank you very much, Irene, and apologies to everyone. I have a sore throat, so my voice may not be as clear as normal. Firstly, to say thank you very much, Frederic, for your interesting presentation. I particularly liked the last piece about the capacity that we need to build up in terms of staffing across municipalities across Europe to support the climate agenda. So for the next session until 11, we're going to look at regions across Europe who have some interesting and innovative approaches to addressing the energy challenge. And we are going to commence with David. So David Bourgoin is I suppose an interesting person that I'm really looking forward to hearing more from. So I suppose a climate entrepreneur. So one of these people that's developing enterprise and innovation solutions to the climate challenge. So I think this is really important, where we have technical solutions meeting the entrepreneurial world, and that we can develop critical solutions to address our energy challenges. So very much looking forward to your presentation, David, and I'll pass over to you.
Thanks a lot, Seamus. So first, I will send in the chat a link that for people who want to have a better look at what I'm going to describe. It's a PDF they can download online, and I will really present you very quickly the model and what we have found, but of course there are many more details in this paper. So I'm going to present, so if you can switch my slide to the first one of my presentation, I don't know. Yeah, I'm going to present you a research that was conducted last year with two other people, Pierre Crépeau from the city of Lorient in France, Brittany, and Frédéric Adam from the Gion Engineering Studio. So this, next slide, please. This research started from the following problem statement. we know that in Europe, during this century, we will face a growing number of issues due to climate change and the damage to our infrastructures, in particular energy infrastructure, will be massive. Researchers are expecting a 10-fold increase in Europe. The second part of our problem, next slide, is that in urban areas, we have in fact on site, if I may say, a lot of thermal, electrical, renewable energy sources available, but they are inhomogeneously available to buildings. So this, in a way, hinders their harvest. And the third aspect of our problem, next slide, is that we are in fact dependent on off-site large-scale expansive network infrastructures that in general were developed during the 19th century. They are relying, so electricity and gas networks to name them, and they are relying on economic systems that are either market or redistribution based, and this could be also part of the issue. So I'm going to present you, next slide please, very quickly, what we did to investigate that and find solutions. So we took a site in Lorient, so it's, as you can see, it's a Google Maps screenshot that was particularly interesting for us because it was a mix of several types of buildings. And we compared, in fact, on those sites, several variants, as we call them, using key indicators. So I will first very briefly describe the site. I will not describe in detail the variants. I don't have time for that, but I welcome any questions you have, and then jump into the conclusions. Next slide, please. So as you can see on the map, we have 3 blocks. The first one is a school, which is, as all schools, only occupied during the day and not during the vacation, and so on and so forth, with a large roof surface available. And as you can see, we are also nearby the water, and there is a sea in Lorient, it's a harbor. We have another block which is made of offices, so it's densely populated during the day. And we have a third block that is made of housing, so it's mostly occupied during the evening, night, and morning. And so we are going to study these 3 blocks, next slide please, using models so that have been in fact designed for other sites. The engineering studio Gion is actively working for customers in France and abroad on various kind of retrofit, improvements of buildings, new build, and so on. And of course, when they design this kind of studies, they need to go in depth in the detail of each building. It takes a lot of time to create those mock-ups, those twin simulations. So they didn't recreate, in fact, those mock-ups for this specific site in Lorient due to time and money constraints. But you can, we could say it's a very good approximation. So we will implement on those sites, on those 4 blocks, the 4 techno-economic system variants that we are interested in. I will briefly mention them. And we will simulate only heating and cooling and domestic hot water consumption and production on those sites. We assume, in fact, that for PV electricity, there is already in place something, because in France, we have been moving forward quite fast on what we call the collective self-consumption. Even if this in practice is not very common, it's available, so let's say. So it's somehow a solution that is already on the market. So next slide, please. So I will very briefly describe the variant for you. I apologize, it's a bit terse. It's only figures in on a table, but just imagine and we will go deeper if you need in the question sections. what we call the conventional EGN, electricity and gas network, imagine it's only gas boilers and air source heat pumps for cooling in the summer. So it's a very basic solutions, but it's a very state-of-the-art solutions in Europe. What we call low carbon EGN is in fact the same idea, but instead of having only gas boiler, you're relying on ground source heat pumps for each building. And therefore you are a bit more, you are producing a little bit of renewable energy on site. And it's also a state-of-the-art recommendation for many building owners. The third variant is the DHCN. So you know this acronym, it's District Heating and Cooling Network. So it's a very basic solution that has been around for decades. It brings heat or cool energy to the building directly without any on-site renewable energy production. So it's not a fifth generation DHCN. You could imagine much more complex and refined system. We just kept it simple to, I would say, to focus on what is currently developed in Europe. And the last variant is the SIMS one. So the SIMS will rely a lot on solar thermal energy on roofs. It will also rely a lot on ground source heat pumps, but those heat pumps will share the borehole. So there is a kind of a mutualization of this part of the system. And these boreholes will be used not only for producing heat, but also for storing extra heat, either coming from the solar thermal panels in the summer or from the waste heat of the heat pumps that are used for cooling for the offices. So you see it's a much more complex system and potentially more expensive and more complex to implement, but it's still completely state-of-the-art regarding technologies. So if we look at these figures, so let's focus on that briefly. So next slide, please. The first line is this conventional EGN system. As I said, it's a system that is, I would say, not that efficient from the imported in. So I'm sorry, I will describe briefly the indicators. So we have 5 indicators. The first one is imported energy, which means how much energy you need from the offsite. So roughly it comes from the electricity or gas network. GHG emission is just very simple to understand. It's how much energy, emissions, scope 1 emissions you will create during the system operation. LCO, levelized cost of energy, is also a very straightforward one, is how much this kilowatt hour, either thermal or electricity, but here we are only focusing on thermal, will cost you over the full system lifetime. And the fourth one, carbon abatement cost, is a little less known than the previous one, but it's basically a decision-making indicator, how much removing a ton of carbon will cost you in comparison with the carbon reference solution. So it's a good way to decide between 2 alternative systems. And the last one is a bit unusual. It's what we call peak network demand. It's in a way to measure how much we rely upon these offsite networks to ensure the system operation from a power point of view. So how much megawatt you need to rely upon to make that system operate during a full year. Let's move to the next slide. So if you have such a comparison, you can easily realize that there are a lot of differences between the 4 variants. So if we look at what we could consider the state-of-the-art green solutions, or low carbon EGN, we are roughly competitive with it regarding the cost aspect of the solution, so LCOE or carbon abatement cost. Next slide, please. Of course, DHCN, we know that's more expensive. It's a fact that everyone is aware of. It can be, of course, still very relevant in some cities, in some districts, in some configuration, but in our case, it's not that obvious. Next slide, please. Where SIMs are really shining, of course, is the way that we are relying on on-site renewable energy production. So as a result, we have a massive decarbonization of the system, which is really impressive, even in comparison with the best low carbon EGN solution. And this is for us is really the first very interesting aspect, that we are not trying to be in between things. We think that we need to focus on deep decarbonization that is close to zero emission, in fact. Then the last comparison between the two potential solutions, the imported energy doesn't really bring SIMs that much forward, but I would say it's still very interesting to consider that as an energy sufficiency benefit. But where SIMs is really interesting, of course, is the next slide, please, is when you, I mentioned, yeah, so there was a glitch I forgot to, so that was the slide I was discussing about previously. So the imported energy, SIMs and low carbon EGN are the same. Next slide, please. And regarding the last indicator, where we think we have a real benefit for SIMs, big network demand, we see a large difference between the state-of-the-art green solution and SIMs, because we are not only energy sufficient, we are also peak demand sufficient. And this is quite important, we think, in the future. Next slide, please. Because if you think about the offsite network as a cost for the consumer, and I would say a potential obstacle to development for renewable energy on site, it's true that you need to rely less on this offsite grid. Because in fact, when you think about peak offsite demand, what we could call maximum power demand, it will of course considerably impact the network sizing, the infrastructure capex and opex, and everything in the end, of course, will have an impact on the energy price from those networks. So it's very important that we consider a missing aspect of the energy transition right now, which is how much do we need to have large-scale power-hungry networks right now? Is it really the way to go? Next slide, please. So to conclude my comparison, a more visual explanation of what's going on. If you have the 4 variants on the left, and you think about the power demand over time for an entire year from January to December, so power demand in megawatts, so you see that you are basically, next slide, please, you are basically having with SIMs a completely unconventional temporal dynamics. The 3 other variants are more or less exhibiting the same features because they are quite coupled with the offsite network, while SIMs seems to be much more uncoupled. And if you want to look at that in another way, next slide, please, you can look at the frequency analysis. How often are you asking these offsite networks for power? So on the horizontal axis, you have the demand threshold in megawatts, so the power you need from the network at any given time. And on the vertical axis, you have how often you do that, the frequency of overshooting this demand threshold. And you, in a way, you describe the offsite energy network dependency of your system. Next slide, please. If you have in mind that the dashed line is in fact the consumption demand from the site itself, you will, by comparison, realize how coupled or uncoupled you are from these on-site demand. So next slide, please. If you look at the SIMs, it's very weakly coupled to the offsite networks. And that's very good because it means that potentially it doesn't require a large-scale infrastructure to run. And it will, in a way, harvest as much as possible on-site energy. In comparison, the 2 others, next slide, please. The 2 others EGN variants are partially coupled. I could explain why, but it will take too much time. they are more parallel, if you want, to the first dashed line I described, which means they are more coupled. And the last, next slide, please. DHCN, of course, by construction is strongly coupled. So it means, of course, when DHCN doesn't run or has an issue, the entire site is impacted. Next slide, please. So to conclude on that very briefly, we could describe, of course, a lot of things about, and I would really encourage you to read the paper. It's 6 pages, it's not too long. Why it seems so efficient and why it's a good idea, we think, for urban areas to develop such systems. First, because we think that heat is mostly the missing link in energy transition in urban areas. There is a large heat demand, but it's very expensive to distribute on long distances. But on the contrary, it's efficient to store on site. So why not considering that heat should be produced as much as possible on site? At the same time, there is an on-site heat abundance from the fact that the city itself is a kind of a gigantic solar thermal panel, if you want to see it like that. And the city also is full of urban activities that produce waste heat. So we should really tap into those two sources way more than we do today. And this will only be possible if you organize what I call reciprocal exchange of energy resources. So not only considering demand, how could we manage the demand to synchronize it between buildings, but also the supply. If my neighbor is supplying me with a lot of solar thermal hot water, I'm very glad, even if this neighbor doesn't need it at some point. I also can offer my storage capacity to my neighbor if it's necessary. And all those unused spaces are in fact transformed into financial assets. And this is another way to see this transition, is how can we, in a way, create new revenue streams for building owners. And last but not least, I didn't mention at all that in my presentation, will take too much time, but there is a network topology issue in our current systems that we think could be addressed with this approach that is very ad hoc, very focusing on what we call mesh topology, which is much more robust and adaptive and will allow endogenous growth and step-by-step innovation. That's all. Next slide, please. Thank you very much for your attention. I hope I didn't take too much time, Irene, and you can contact me for any further questions. And we have developed a LinkedIn group. We want to move that forward, so keep in touch. You will hear from us, I hope, soon. Thanks again.
That's great. Thank you very much, David. Very stimulating presentation. And again, I think pushing the boundaries of different areas and forcing people to think about heat in a different way. And I think we might hopefully have some opportunity for questions before we move on to the next session. I'd like now to introduce Rachel Tully, who's the head of international projects within Extremadura Energy Agency. I've had the pleasure to visit this energy agency a number of years ago as part of the Managed Energy Service, doing an expert mission, and they're doing some really innovative and interesting things over in that part of Spain. So Rachel is a mechanical engineer, but has been working in Extremadura for the last number 5 or 6 years, and particularly is leading up their European and international projects. So pass over to you, Rachel. Thanks very much.
Yeah, thank you very much for the introduction. So I'm maybe not going to be so specific as the previous speaker, but I did want to give a general overview of the different initiatives we are developing in our region. All of them are based on the new regional energy and climate plan that has recently been developed and has a horizon for 2030. Then I would like to go over a very interesting, or at least innovative project here in the region, House Invest. It's a Horizon 2020 project funded that has just finished, and it has allowed us to do a lot of work in energy efficiency in the residential sector. The third initiative would be the public sector. So we have developed a regional energy efficiency strategy for public buildings. And we are going to start implementing it in the following months. And then finally, a more social aspect of this energy transition, which is an energy transition lab. I'm not sure if I have the capacity to move the slides forward. I can't see the arrow, so yeah, now I can. Okay, so yeah, this is the plan I was mentioning, as all of the other countries, based on the Paris Agreement, the Sustainable Development Objectives, the European Green Deal, or the member state countries have developed a national energy and climate plan. In particular, in Extremadura is one of the 2 regions that has also developed a regional energy and climate plan. This is mainly because we have a regional government that's very committed with the energy transition, and it was willing to establish their own ambitious targets. Regarding this, Extremadura as well is a very different region compared to other regions in Spain. So this plan not only establishes the targets which we have to reach, but they also do it. It also does it taking into account the positive development that it's going to have in the region, increasing the jobs in 20%, increasing the gross domestic product in 25%, working a lot on the territorial cohesion and so on. So this is basically the framework from which we then develop all the other initiatives. So just to quickly go through the main targets. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, it has both. The plan includes both mitigation measures and adaptation measures. We focus maybe from the agency more in the mitigation measures. So we have objectives to reduce 10% of greenhouse gas emissions to 2030 based on 2017 references. There are also huge investments planned in renewable energy, more than 10,000 megawatts installed to achieve 100% electric generation. And then there is a specific mention as well for energy efficiency in buildings with the target to develop renovate 24,000 households and reduce 22% reduction of the primary energy consumed. So specifically then moving into the private sector, through this House Invest project I mentioned, funded by Horizon 2020, it provided development assistance to overcome the barriers that the region was facing regarding residential renovation. The main problem was that there were a lot of multifamily housing dwellings. So this was itself a barrier, and then there was another barrier that was the finance. This project just ended in May 2022. So I'm happy to share any results after if you have any questions. The main achievements were to develop a regional financial instrument that was created, achieving a collaboration between public and private sector. So this ensured that all of the household or homeowners had the tranquility that there was a public support behind, and the same happened with the private financing entities. So it was very difficult to achieve. It wasn't even done till like half-time through the project, but it's finally been very successful. And with this, the buildings that have been renovated, an average of the savings achieved is around 40%, but in some cases they even reach 80%. Here I had some graphs, but they have moved. So anyway, just to say that from the over 300 buildings that were studied, most of them, the target of the buildings that were being studied were already not really very efficient because they were built before the 1980s, but still over 90% of them had less than a D letter regarding energy efficiency and greenhouse gas emissions as well. So with the measures that were proposed, they increased between 1, 2, and 3 letters, not only in energy, but also, as I mentioned, in CO2 reduction. So then if we move on to the public sector, there is in place since 2018-19 a strategy to address the need of retrofits in public buildings. This was developed by the regional government together with Agenex. The only problem was that even if we identified that there was a huge potential for savings, there was also a very big need of investment. The region has committed some of its own resources to overcome these investments, but there was also a need of finding additional financing to overcome this. So this is when we had to involve the private sector as well. Just a quick overview: we have developed the divided the buildings depending on the type. As an average, they have a potential for 32% energy savings plus 29% of the remaining energy needs to be covered by renewables on site. The biggest consumers are the hospitals, as you can see here in green, and the care centers. So all of the public buildings that have overnight stays and so on. In total, there was a preliminary analysis of over 700 buildings. You can see here the figures of energy needs and the investment needed, which is very high, but also the savings are very high. So this is when we decided that something had to be done, and we had to find different ways of financing. The solution was found in the European Investment Bank. So an ELENA project has just been approved and started in April last month. The name is Renowave, and it's coordinated by the regional government of Extremadura, of course, with support from the Energy Agency. So mainly when we saw different possibilities of how to address these energy renovations, we saw that there was a need of private investments, obviously. Energy performance contracts and so on are still something very innovative in the region. So there was not enough staff with knowledge to develop these contracts. This is why through this technical assistance that's being granted, we are going to overcome the problem. Inside this renovate project, we aim at targeting, as you can see, 11 hospitals and 89 care centers. Those are the main consumers I was talking about before. There's going to be detailed energy audits to find the best solutions and the best measures to implement in each of the buildings. But then there's another big group of buildings, which are health centers, schools, higher education schools, which some of them are maybe in a better state, or they have a better energy performance, but they still have a very big potential for including renewable energies. So in this sense, there will also be a bundling done, mainly based on geographical zones. The region is very big, so gathering 3, 4, 10 schools or health centers, it will be possible to involve as well private financing models like leasing or PPAs or whatever. This will be done during the project to see which is the most viable way to do in each case. And with the aim of achieving the renovation that the public building stock needs in the region. And this is just a few pieces of news of the impact it has in the region, and how, thanks to the European Investment Bank, all of this is going to be finally implemented. And then just to end up, because this is another initiative that's a bit more different to what we usually do in the region. It's another Horizon 2020 funded project called Repeat. And as we were mentioning before, the need of the targets in renewable energy, they are not only anymore regarding large scale plants, but the distribution network has to be adapted to the new energy system model that we are trying to promote, I think, all around Europe now, which is more democratic. It has citizens in the center, and it promotes self-consumption and on-site distributed generation. So through this project, we are developing an energy transition lab in Extremadura. And it allows citizens, companies, small companies, larger companies, public administration, anyone that's interested to join and to participate in this, to define what we want the energy system to be in the following years. And we are now currently launching a call for mirror regions. So as well, if anyone's interested, they can just go onto the Repeat website and find out what we're doing. There's 3 different regions involved: Highlands and Islands of Scotland, Ostrobothnia and Finland, and Extremadura in Spain. And that's all I wanted to share. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Great, thank you very much, Rachel. I'm just going to check the chat if there's any questions from anybody, any of our listeners. No, so we have a few minutes before the next session. So maybe I just have one question for you, David, and then one for you, Rachel, if that's okay.
Yeah.
David, so in terms of your SEAMS approach, what do you think is the next step in the development of the concept, and what are your plans for I suppose development or rolling it out?
Good question. It's true that currently this kind of approach could look more complicated than the traditional ones. We are focusing on finding sites that are very relevant for demonstrating the concept, so that it will convince other building owners to jump on board and join this kind of new ways of developing energy systems. So I'm working with engineering studios to meet customers that are potentially interested in designing things a bit differently. But as I said during my presentation, everything is really state of the art, and it's only a slightly different way to manage current solutions. So I'm pretty confident we will not meet that much obstacles. The main obstacle, if I have foreseen, is that we could have a lot of contractual complexities in front of us, because currently it's true that buildings are really thought as individual entities. There is very little legal framework for considering buildings as, which I would say, block level or district level entities that could manage together resources. So this is the main obstacle right now.
Okay, great, David. Thank you very much. Rachel, there's actually a question for you in the chat in terms of how you would use the investment fund for non-public buildings, so the multifamily homes.
Yeah, so to highlight that guarantee fund is only for private households, and how it works is that the regional government has backed up, let's say, that fund with a few million euros from the regional ERDF funds. So when a building of house owners wants to develop these energy improvements, there is a public entity that's managing the fund. So they will contact them, and they will reach this private investment with a financial institution. The only thing is that if you were just to go to this same financial institution without having this fund, or without them being involved in the fund because they take part in it, the financing conditions would be a lot worse. So what we have achieved is that, like, banks have this security that there's not going to be any default payments, because that's why the public fund is there behind to support it. Well, the financial conditions are a lot better. And then let's say the loan is given to the community itself. So all of the neighbors have to, not all of the neighbors, but there has to be a majority for the agreement, and the community receives the loan. They overcome the energy retrofit, and then with the savings achieved, well, that loan is repaid. So the conditions are quite good. Yeah.
Very good, and I'll take advantage of the fact that I'm moderator just to ask one final question. I'm particularly very interested in your citizens engagement activity and the repeat, the lab. So I suppose that's citizens designing the energy system into the future. Is that's what you're trying to achieve?
Yes. That's it's really interesting. It's led by ZSI in Austria, and what they do is that they consider that on one hand, until now, let's say all of the energy planning has only been done from the public administration. There is a public consultation, but there's really not much more to add usually when it's at that stage. So from here, we've done a series of meetings and workshops. So first you do your vision. So how do you envision your region or your city or whatever from here until 2040 or 2050 or 2030? You can do the horizon that you want. And then you do a backcasting exercise to see what you have to start doing now to achieve your vision. And then right now we are currently at the stage that we have already defined change targets, and now we are working on the different actions that have to be implemented to achieve them. And just to add, because I heard David speaking about that before, it's all focused on we don't want any more large scale plant generations. We want to have I don't know, all of the citizens want to be involved. There's a couple of energy communities that are just being established now in the region. One in a small municipality in the north and the other one in one of the largest cities. So I think, yeah, that's basically going to be the future from now on.
Great. Okay. So just to say, thank you very much, Rachel and David, for first of all taking the time to prepare the presentations and present some innovative thinking, both in terms of technologies, systems, and then also financing and citizen engagement from your regions. I'm going to pass you back to Irene to take you through to the next stage.
Yes, well, again, thanks Rachel, Seamus, and David for this lovely session. It was very interesting, and I hope it was very interesting for the audience as well. Now it's time that we move on to the next speaker. She is Louise White. She works on the energy efficiency and energy advisory team at the European Investment Bank, whose role is to assess projects related to energy efficiency, as well as manage the joint European Investment Bank and Commission grant facility, ELENA, European Local Energy Assistance, which supports the preparation of projects in this sector and that she will present today. So I leave it to you, and the floor is yours, Louise. Unfortunately, we cannot hear you. I think there must be a problem with sound, that you're not muted or unmuted. I would ask you if you can maybe disconnect and connect again. Maybe that should be it. Like sometimes Zoom doesn't work. Well, I'm sorry for the technical problems. We all know how these things are. We tested before, it worked, now it doesn't. However, like hopefully we will find a solution, but don't worry, we will hear the presentation on a way or another. So let's wait a few seconds to see if she can come back, and hopefully we can hear her voice. And yeah. Okay, a bit more patience. Again, very sorry for this. Let's see if she can join in the next couple of minutes. If not, I would suggest maybe we move on to the next session. And then, okay, this is back. Oh, it works.
Okay. Sorry about that.
Very glad to hear. No
I
problem.
plugged in new speakers. Okay.
No problem.
Always,
we like to bring
technical
emotion.
issues with Zoom for me. Okay.
Yeah.
So as Irene said, my name is Louise White, and working in the Energy Efficiency Division. And one of the main mandates, our facilities that we're managing is Elena. So I'll give you a little bit of a background, but focus more on Elena today. So next slide, please. So just to set the scene a little bit, just to show the EIB activity in this whole sector. So you can see there the energy efficiency lending, basically over nearly the last decade. And you can see back in 2012, we were at just over 1 billion lending for energy efficiency, compared to 2020 when it was 5.8 billion. And there was a similar level in 2021. So you can see here really the big increase overall in this sector, and buildings is one of the largest parts of that. So I mean, this is in line with the EU priorities, and we've got the renovation wave and everything, but just to give you a feeling for the activity in this space. And how the EIB is supporting these projects is of course through the loans. So it can give direct loans. But for energy efficiency, as you know, because you have a lot of small fragmented projects, the intermediated structure is actually the most popular. So by that, what I mean is the EIB will lend to a local bank or some sort of regional and national entity. And then that entity can use its own network in that particular place to on-lend to the smaller energy efficiency projects. And as well as lending, energy efficiency projects can often require some support, some advisory and technical assistance support. So the European Investment Bank also has this advisory hub and has technical assistance mandates. So we have, JASPERS, Financial Instruments Advisory, but the one I'm going to focus on today is Elena, because that's actually our largest technical assistance facility that's dedicated to this sector. So next slide, please. So what is Elena? I mean, it was mentioned briefly in Rachel's presentation, but it's essentially a joint facility between the Commission and the EIB. So it's Commission money and the EIB is managing it. And it's been going now since 2009, about 137 projects currently that are either ongoing or finished. And to date, we have nearly 230 million of grants support that has been awarded, and that's supporting about 7.5 billion euros of investment. The important point to maybe note here is that it's not a grant for the actual investments themselves, it's a grant to help prepare the projects. And this is very useful, particularly for projects that are nearly there, but just need a little bit of extra help to get off the ground. So Elena is really there to prepare the projects. Next slide, please. So here it's more talking about the types of eligible investment. So Elena works around 3 budget envelopes. So one is the more general energy efficiency sector. And this is where you have buildings, any type of buildings. And then you also have other energy efficiency types of projects that can be supported, like street lighting and district heating. Then the second envelope is 100% dedicated to the residential sector. So it doesn't matter what type of residential building it is, public, private, individual, multi-apartment. The important thing here is that you are a residential building, and there's a specific focus to try and support this sector. And then there's also a transport envelope, which not so relevant for the audience today. But these are the types of eligible investment that Elena can support. And next slide, please. And then what Elena will give you is the grant to basically pay for the activities that are needed to try to get these projects off the ground. So you can do that through internal staff. And a lot of the time, it's good to have some internal staff involved because they have the history of the project. And then you also need them to get some, you know, the buy-in and the decision-making powers as well. So normally you have a mixture of internal staff and then the short-term external experts. And this is really why Elena was established in the first place, was the external experts, because the idea is that you can hire short-term consultants to get the expertise that you may not have in-house. And then these experts can help you to do the tasks that are necessary. So a lot of these would be around the technical studies and energy audits, particularly for buildings, but also there's usually a lot of legal or financial advice that's also needed. So you need a wide scope of expertise that you might not necessarily have in your organization. And then particularly in the one-stop shop sector, we see that more and more there's a larger component of communication and stakeholder engagement. And particularly when you're talking about you know, local residences or individuals, you do have to have some period of time where you're basically able to spend the time showcasing the potential benefits of a retrofit program, and also just to be there for answering questions and just making them more aware of the options that they have available to them, what sort of suppliers, you know, contractors, what type of works that can be done. So a lot of the tasks here, I think, are very, very relevant to what we see happening in one-stop shops. Next slide, please. So then just looking at what Elena is doing currently. So we have some we have 27 ongoing dedicated residential projects. And what I mean by that is just they were from the residential envelope. Some projects might not necessarily be called one-stop shops, but they have a lot of the hallmarks. So we have some banks who are getting Elena support. So they obviously have their own client base, but they want to increase energy efficiency related loans. So they would hire Elena to get the technical expertise alongside the lending, and then be able to offer their clients that sort of support to try to encourage more energy efficiency loans. Then you also have, on the other side, you have some energy agencies who obviously have maybe the technical knowledge in-house, but might want to expand on that. And then also the support that they would be providing would be to try to help the residents to gain access to national grants, or to help them prepare financial loan applications for banks that would also be supporting these types of measures. So a lot of the one-stop shop models can vary, you know, in their setup, but ultimately what you're trying to offer is, you know, one place where all the, you know, the consumer can go, the resident can go and get all their advice. So here are just some examples of some one-stop shops that we have. I know there's going to be a speaker from Superhomes later on in this presentation as well. But you also have some in Belgium. There was ones in France, and the Netherlands is another one. So I think if you're interested in this, you can always go on the Elena website, and in there you have a list of the ongoing and completed projects, and that just allows you to see what type of support actually Elena is providing. But maybe just to look at this last example here, the Limburg one briefly, because next slide, please. It gives a kind of an overview of where the EIB is providing the loan support, but also you have this technical assistance alongside it. So there's a regional fund, and this is the type of intermediated structure that I'd mentioned earlier. So the EIB is lending into this regional fund, which was already existing. And then this fund is providing long-term loans to the private citizens in that area. So the idea of the Elena support alongside it is, well, you know, if you're thinking of doing some renovations in your home and you want to put, say, for example, PV installations, which are a bit easier, you can get the expert advice at that time to also perhaps look at other types of energy efficiency works that could be done at the same time. So you have loan officers and energy performance assessors, energy coaches. They're all working with the clients to try to encourage them to take on some, to look at the energy efficiency, measure potentials in their home, and they can also get technical advice so that they can make the best decision for their home. So this is just an example of, say, where the EIB and the ELENA grant can work quite nicely together on both sides of what's needed. Next slide, please. So here, I mean, just basically ELENA can support any type of preparation activities that are needed, but just some common ones that we've seen from a number of one-stop shops. So as I said, the team is usually composed of some internal staff and external subcontractors. And in the one-stop shop, it's very much about this team liaising with individual homes to encourage the investment. So then you can provide the technical assessments that are needed. In most cases, this is some form of energy audit. And then you also help the homeowners to not necessarily, they may not procure themselves, but if there's a tender procedure or there's some sort of a mini tender, or they just want to get some help with the type of suppliers that can do these works, there's a lot of support that's available so that the best measures can be picked. And then, of course, we also see, as I mentioned, the promotion of energy efficiency, the marketing and engaging with the homeowners is a big we see a big uptake in that sort of activity at the moment, because it's something that is necessary to build the support. Next slide, please. So here, I mean, I won't go into this too much, but it's just more to give you some of the general rules. So what the grant does is it covers up to 90% of the costs related to the project development support. By that, I just mean that the range of activities that are needed in order to prepare the investments. And how that's assessed is through an application process where a member of the EIB team would work with the applicant to agree on what the total amount could be. Generally, we're looking at investments of about 30 million euro. And that's just a general rule, because when you get this grant, you have to also commit to the investments actually happening. So generally, the grants are around 1.5 to 2 million, and then we're looking at a leverage factor of 20 for the energy envelope. So 30 million euro is generally the type of scale we're looking at. You should note, though, that for the residential sector, because of that, that push to try to support this sector, there's a leverage factor of 10. I don't want to go too much of the details of the ELENA rules, but it's just more to note that for the residential sector, then for every 1 million euro of grant, you have to commit to 10 million euro of investment. So there's a little bit of flexibility there. But the main point is that the investment has to happen. So to get ELENA support, you do have to show some level of maturity, because you are committing to this investment happening within a period of 3 to 4 years. The final beneficiary, i.e. the person who is signing up to the ELENA grant, doesn't necessarily have to be the entity that's investing. And also the investment doesn't have to be all through loans. It can also be a combination of grants. It doesn't have to come from the EIB. It can come from other sources. The purpose of ELENA is to make sure that the investments actually happen. So here you're just getting some of the main features of this program. But I suppose the main message here is that it's not like an Horizon 2020 grant or a research grant where you just get the money and then you have certain obligations, of course, but not necessarily investment. ELENA is very much focused on projects on the ground at the end of the day. Next slide, please. And I'm pretty much done. So just a summary, I mean, for here, it's, there is support available, particularly for one-stop shops. And these, technical assistance advisory we see are very important elements into getting these projects off the ground. And the ultimate aim, as I said, was to support the development of a bankable pipeline of projects. So I would encourage you, if you have any queries or you have some projects you think might be eligible, to contact the Elena team, because there are no calls. It's a first come, first served type of a program, and we can work with you throughout the process to see if you have something that could potentially avail of Elena. So I think that's it from me. And you have my email also on the last slide. So I would always say use the Elena mailbox because that's a centralized one. But of course, if you have something in particular, feel free to also use my personal address. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Louise. We have received like a couple of questions in the chat. So I'm gonna read them to you. Maybe you can provide an answer. So the first one, it's by Matthew Tully, and he's asking, what are the typical rates for the European Investment Bank loans? And what are the typical rates to the consumer for retrofit?
Yeah,
in terms of 25 to 30 years.
I started the question now as well. This is difficult for me to answer because we don't lend directly to the consumer. So how it would happen would be the EIB would lend to the local bank, and then the ultimate rate would be dependent on a range of factors, depending on the country, depending on that bank, depending on that particular market. But I will say is that the logic behind this is that the EIB can raise money cheaply on the capital markets because it's backed by the member states. So the idea is when the bank is lending, when the EIB is lending to that local bank, that the offering to the private consumer is meant to be this long-term lending to the final consumer. I don't have the rates that they, because it would vary per country and per project, but the ones, say for example in Limburg, they were offering loans of about 12 to 15 years, actually, not 25 to 30. I've seen other ones in France that were actually 20, 25 years. So it would just depend on the setup in that particular country. And the next question is similar. So again, the EIB loans, I have to stress, is a separate process to Elena. So the EIB loans, if it would go through a separate appraisal process. The Elena facility is commission grant money. So sometimes we have the overlap. So in Limburg, for example, the Limburg project came to the EIB and there was a separate appraisal there for the loan, but in parallel, they were also applying for Elena, and one is not necessarily dependent on the other. So for now, there are no EIB loans available through the Ireland Super Homes, but in such a case, EIB would not be lending directly to that one-stop shop. What would happen is that EIB would lend through, say, Allied Irish Bank or Bank of Ireland or one of the local banks, and then that bank would be lending to the one-stop shop. So usually for the EIB, you're talking about a much bigger portfolio, and then it's the local banks who would be distributing.
Okay, thank you very much, Louise. And then, of course, I encourage the audience, if you have more questions regarding Elena, to reach out directly.
Exactly, yeah.
To the information. Well, you have all the information on the screen, but now it's time that we move on to the next session, the project examples on renovation and one-stop shop initiatives. Our first speaker in this session is Stephen O'Connor. Stephen is the managing director at Electric Ireland Super Homes. He has 25 years of experience in the energy and telecom industries, both in the public and the private sector, working across corporate finance and public policy. He holds a primary degree in commerce and a master's in accounting both from the UCD in Dublin, and is a fellow of the Institute of Chartered Accountants in Ireland. So, Stephen, if you're ready, the floor is yours.
Terrific. Thanks, Irene, for that very nice introduction. I don't think I provided that. Somebody in the team must have provided that. It's nice to hear kind of when somebody reads out your background, it's kind of almost a little embarrassing. But Can I take control of the slides, or are you going to do the slides? If so, do you want to move it on?
You should be able to control the slides. So let's try.
Okay, perfect. I think that's
okay.
Okay, so actually, great. Okay, so look, just to introduce very quickly.
Okay, I think we have a connection problem.
A new one-stop shop.
Okay. I think we have missed a few seconds from your presentation. I think there was a connection problem, so you can repeat if you can.
Okay, is that okay now?
Yes, now it works.
Perfect. Okay, I was just saying, Electric Ireland Superhomes is exactly 1 year old. We were formed on the 1st of June 2021 between two companies coming together. One is a company called Tipperary Energy Agency, and Seamus, who was speaking earlier, is the chair of Tipperary Energy Agency, and they have been doing deep retrofits in Ireland for about 5 years, and probably had about 30% market share in Ireland, albeit it's a small market. So a year ago, Electric Ireland, which is the largest utility in Ireland with about 50% market share in Ireland, but with an ambition to really move into clean energy and decarbonisation, particularly of heat, and to move into electrification of heat. Electric Ireland had discussions with TEA about the two companies coming together to form a one-stop shop. And a year ago, that company was launched, so became Electric Ireland Superhomes. So that company has ambition to deliver about 35,000 deep retrofits to a B2 standard by 2030. So that's the background to that. Obviously a very big prize. This is a kind of a once in a generation massive Irish engineering project where there's a government target to deliver 500,000 deep retrofits, which in context is about 25% of our housing stock. So this is a very significant move by Ireland. We have done a lot of shallow retrofits in Ireland. We've done about 400,000 shallow retrofits, but really only 1 or 2% of the retrofits in Ireland are deep. And there is real kind of ambition and cross-party political support for a real fundamental change to the energy efficiency of our residential buildings. And Electric Ireland Superhomes wants to play a big part in that. So that's our kind of the mission of the one-stop shop, which has obviously been supported by Superhomes 2030. The mission of this is to, very simply empower our customers to achieve warmer, healthier, low-carbon homes. That's what we're about. We want to move from where we are now, which is one central office, to 4 kind of regional offices. And that's all kind of within the ambition of the Superhomes 2030 project. We want to recruit and develop our staff to go from where we are today, which is about 30 staff, to probably 200 staff. Obviously, to get scale in any market, you need to automate, you need to digitize, and we intend to do that. Obviously, we are involved in government grants, and there's significant subsidies from government to homeowners. But that, which is great, because that's very good for stimulating the demand side of the market and making it affordable. But obviously we're operating in that regulatory regime where government is transferring large amounts of taxpayers' money to individual homeowners, and that has to come with an appropriate regulatory framework. And we are heavily regulated as a one-stop shop operator by the government through its energy agency, SEAI, Sustainable Energy Authority of Ireland. So there's a big regulatory and governance piece to what we do. We are the one-stop shop operator at the centre, but we are dependent on contractors to do the work for us. We go out, we work with a homeowner, we do an energy survey, we do an energy design, We sit with them. We are kind of their trusted advisor, but ultimately we depend on a supply chain, which is contractors who are skilled and properly resourced to do the kind of work to deliver the sort of step change in retrofits in Ireland. You know, and that is proving to be a bigger and bigger challenge, I guess, to get the right skills and the right capability. And I'll talk about that work stream in Superhomes 2030, our project, because it is about capacity building in the sector. So I'll talk about that in a minute. And then obviously, you know, we're at the start of the process. The contractors are in the middle, and the consumers, this is all about consumers. This is all about our customers. They need more awareness. They need more education. They need to know what their grants are. They need to understand them. They need to know how they achieve them. And then they also, you know, coming back to the affordability question, grants are great, and the new grant scheme in Ireland can give people, you know, up to 40 or 50% of the cost of a retrofit. But how do we plug that gap effectively? Grants and the savings on energy bills that will accrue are not enough. So how do we get the cost and availability of finance? And in our Superhomes 2030 project, there is a specific work module on customer finance, and I'll talk about that in a bit. The graph on the right just shows how we want to ramp up from doing about 100 homes a year, which we delivered in 2021, which equated to about 5 million in capital spend by our customers. The average retrofit in 2021 was about 50,000 euros in capital. We hope to do 250 this year, you know, which is probably more like 12, 13 million in capital, all the way up, you know, hopefully hitting 1,000 retrofits by 2024 and onwards and upwards. So that's the ambition of the one-stop shop that is the subject of the Superhomes 2030 project. So the one-stop shop in detail, we are a registered one-stop shop. As I said, there's a regulatory requirement to be registered. You can't just set up services in Ireland under the Department of Energy and SEAI and say, I'm here to offer a one-stop shop service. You need to go through a very detailed registration process, which involves you know, a lot of work around your processes and your quality. And we have obviously been through that with SEAI. Just, you know, to give you a context, there's only 5 registered one-stop shop operators in Ireland at the moment to service 2 million homes. There's about another 17 that are going through the process of registering, but there are only 5 that are actually registered today. And if you read, so when you come through the parts of the service that you deliver as a one-stop shop, you know, there's awareness and marketing at the start. You know, there's the sales process. You know, you need to become a trusted advisor. You know, you do that design. The design has to meet the B2 standard and the heat loss indicator. You know, there's quality along the process. We see a big role for us as advocacy and education and communication. And again, that was something we did a lot of work on with the Superhomes 2030 project with our partners. And then obviously then there's a lot of paperwork, you know, there's the grants and customer, and we do all of that work. So that's what our registered one-stop shop does. Here's what a Superhome looks like and does. If we get this right, and we hope we do, it is the optimum combination of energy efficient measures throughout the house. And that is cost optimal as well. We're very conscious when we sit down with a customer, they might be spending 40 or 50 or 60,000 euros with us. That's a huge amount of money. And we're very careful with our engineers and our team to say, you know, put yourselves in the shoes of that customer. This is probably the second largest investment they'll make in their life after the house. So, you know, every euro we spend has got to be optimized and must deliver an overall package that is in the best interest of the customer to meet whatever their ambition is for the house. At the very least, we want to achieve a B2, BER. We want to create, obviously, a warm, comfortable house, also free of fossil fuels. We don't work with oil or gas. We only work with heat pumps. if somebody is interested in retrofitting their house and wants to hang on to their gas boiler, they're not a customer for us. We are 100% heat pump led and electrified central heating. So that, but they're all the elements of the home. We go with a very fabric first approach. We get the fabric right first, walls, attic, roofs. We build in ventilation, we build in air tightness. Then we start to look at the energy, solar PV on the roof, heat pumps, and as I said, the ventilation system. So they're all the elements. That's what they all look like. I'm sure you all know what they look like. So, but I just thought I'd leave that in. I mean, that's what all the various elements, that's what the measures look like, and that's what we explain to clients. So details of the actual kind of program itself. So this, we are 2 years into our program at the moment. And I suppose the development, because this, the initial Superhomes 2030 Horizon 2020 program came about a year before the JV was set up. And at that time, it was led very much out of Tipperary Energy Agency, which was where Superhomes originated. So it's a 3-year program. Funding is circa 1 million. Excellent group of partners, which are all detailed across the bottom there. Academic partners, the Energy Agency, TA, financial consultants, Sustainability Works, who have been working with us on the finance solution. ESB were an early partner. They were bringing to the table, obviously, some technical elements, but also the supply business through their supply business, Electric Ireland, and then the EHPA as well, providing the technical input around electrified central heating, around heat pumps. LIT, which is our academic partner, which is now called Technological University of the Shannon, was renamed about 3 months ago, achieved technological university status. And their part to play is around standards, capacity, skills, training. How do we build capacity in the marketplace? Because that there is a squeeze at the moment. We're trying to build new houses in Ireland, but we're also trying to retrofit existing houses, and we lost a lot of construction capability over the last 10 years or so. So there is, while there is good demand side, we are struggling a bit on the supply side at the moment to try and get skills into the market. So that's very important, obviously, to develop our existing contractors and attract new ones. So these are our work programs. The coordination of the project management sits on the top of our program. Then we have market analysis and brand, which was really helpful just to actually do the work, understand exactly what the market is, and try and get some early communication out there about to try and get a brand that would appeal to consumers. That's really, really important to try and cut through with consumers. Then we have, if you like, the kind of the meat of the project, standards and capacity building on the left-hand side, customer journey, and internally getting our business processes right. That's on the right-hand side of that graph. And then in the middle of it was trying to develop a financial solution to help meet that kind of what I'd call the equity gap. If somebody is doing a project for €50,000 and the Irish government is going to give them 20 or 25,000, that still means they have a gap of 20 to 30,000. Where's that coming from? In some instances, it's coming from savings. But if it isn't coming from savings, is there a financial solution that is attractive for consumers, that is on terms and rates, that is packaged and bundled together by the retail banks and credit unions in a way that is easy for customers to understand and easy to draw down on? And that's where Sustainability Works, our Horizon 2020 partner, have been working on that. And we're moving to pilot phase with a number of providers on that. But the standards and capacity, as I say, that's external, that's out into the marketplace. That's making sure we've got the skills, we've got the training, You know, we've got the awareness among our contractors, contractors who might be tempted to work on the new build. You know, we're trying to say to them, look, there is at least 10 or 20 years work here on retrofitting homes. This is worth investing in. This is a long-term government project, a long-term engineering project that is well funded, and that is countrywide. This is another, you know, when we're talking to the contractors, we're saying, look, a lot of the building in Ireland happens in the cities. A lot of it happens in Dublin. A lot of it happens in Cork, you know, Galway, Limerick. But retrofitting is nationwide. So there's a real opportunity for a building contractor who is in rural or regional Ireland. Instead of traveling to Dublin or Cork, where the new build is, you can do this in your backyard and you've none of that commuting. And it's a much better lifestyle proposition for you and your team. So that's where we work with existing contractors, and we are trying to attract new contractors in and to try and train them, and also work with other professionals like architects. You know, they're a very important role. Architects play a really important role when they're doing renovations with customers. If architects are aware of what is available on the energy side, on the retrofit side, on the central heating side, you know, that's a big win for us and a big win for the market. So, you know, our intention is to work with the RIAI, the Institute of Architects in Ireland, to develop education programs for architects. You know, and I suppose that fits in then with our work program number 7, which is dissemination and communication. I mean, that's a very, very wide range of stimulating demand, driving awareness, driving education, and that's a very, very broad part of our program. So I just have a couple of individual slides on some of those work programs I talked about. You know, around market and brand. You know, we launched a new brand. We tried to make this really easy for our customers to navigate and get information from our brand. We went on to social media. We looked and refined our messages, our communication messages, and we attended trade shows, and we did PR on radio and print and advertising campaigns, which all of this was helpful because it was amplifying government communications at the time. But again, you know, so many customers start this conversation by going, oh, geez, a retrofit, it's so hard to understand. Where do I start? What do I do? It's all very technical. And we're really trying to work on communications to try and debunk those myths and make this accessible. Also, you know, on a work program number 5, you know, our internal systems, you know, we looked internally at ourselves and with our partner in the Technological University of the Shannon to say, look, how are we set up here? What's the customer journey like? You know, how do we manage works? You know, have we got, do we look at ourselves often enough? Do we look at continuous improvement? Do we look at audits? What is our overall quality management system like? You know, we know what we do today for 100 homes, but what will this look like when we're 1,000 homes? You know, we need to make sure that things don't fall through the cracks and quality is maintained. So look, some of the learnings that have come out of our program, which may also be relevant for other one-stop shop operators or other people getting who may be on this call. What we have learned very definitely, so the graph on the right-hand side is the actual completed homes we've done. What we have learned is homeowners, quality is really important. Support for their decision-making is really important. Real cost optimal products and solutions for their budget, their building, and what they want to achieve. We have to listen to the customer. We can't go in and say, here's a technical solution, drop it on the carpet and leave. We really have to listen to the customer and guide them through this process. It is very technical and intimidating. We have to deliver an end-to-end service. Customers don't like paperwork. They want us to do as much the paperwork as possible. And customers are interested in that finance product that we're developing through the program with Sustainability Works. Contractors is really important. If we don't get contractors right, we don't have a business and we don't have an industry. And building this network of good contractors takes time. Contractors don't like stop-start. Contractors like a steady pipeline of work. And the Irish government has addressed this by having a year-round programme of grants. It used to be stop-start, and it's not like that anymore. Skilled resources are scarce. We are all aware of that, and we've got to do what we can to make sure that's right. And then finally, the things contractors don't like, they like cash flow. They don't like very lumpy payments by us. They like to know when the money's arriving. They don't like paperwork. Material costs are a real problem at the moment. Alternative work like new build is attractive to them. Getting resources, as we spoke about, and occupied houses, they don't like working in houses where people are. But you know, that can't always be, people can't always move out, but that's a constant kind of to and fro with the contractor. They like working in empty houses. So they're just some of the learnings that I thought I'd share with you from our program. Our public policy environment is supportive at the moment. You know, the good level of grants, multi-annual scheme, but to deliver at scale and industrialize, you know, is a real challenge. On the consumer side, you know, costs are high, and education and loan guarantees and good consumer loan products are really important. Capacity constraints I've spoken about with surveyors, contractors. Automation and digital is going to be key to get scale. And construction costs, supply chain issues, you know, we're just seeing that all the way. But look, we have made good progress, and the Horizon 2020 program has been brilliant for us. Kind of at that early stage we were at, which was, you know, understanding our market and setting us up for success. I think we have then moved on, and actually we have we've still a year to go under the project, but you know, we have then now we have looked on at the stage of development we're at, and we have partnered with the EIB, and it was great to see Louise earlier, and we were successful in getting that next stage of financing from the ELENA scheme to help us with that technical assistance to prepare projects and look at the feasibility design, the technical studies, you know, the actual audits and the preparation activities for us to deliver jobs on the ground, deliver retrofits on the ground. You know, so while up to now the Superhomes 2030 Horizon 2020 was really focused on research and setting ourselves up and has been really successful, then obviously the EIB ELENA has been really good in terms of delivering the investment and delivery. So I suppose we're a company that has benefited from both schemes and real synergies between the two, very different stages and different focuses. But obviously we're delighted to have partnered with both. So that is, I think that's the end of my presentation. Thank you for listening. And I think we're going to do questions all at the end.
Well, thank you very much, Stephen. Yes, we are going to do questions at the end. We have some questions in the chat. Maybe some of them you can answer directly. And if not, like, we can keep them for the end if we have the time. Now it's time to present the next speaker, Federica Foligni. Federica has a background in sustainable architecture from the University of Bologna and in building services, mechanical engineer from Brunel University of London. Besides some research periods in Portugal and Chile, she has also work experience from Germany and England, where she specialized in Horizon 2020 projects and proposals. And well, Federica, whenever you're ready, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Irene. Thank you very much. And it has been great to hear all the great presentations before. I think I can move the slides. Yes. So, okay. I will start discussing today the Sun Horizon projects. Sun Horizon is an Horizon 2020 project, so different from all the projects we've heard before. And it's a project involving 11 countries and 21 partners. We have there 5 academic partners and 12 companies, so it's a very much industrial consortium which focalize on developing and demonstrating technology packages which cover both heating and cooling needs in residential and tertiary buildings, from solar and adopting solar technologies and heat pumps. and in some cases stratified thermal storages. So the scope, the main objective of Sun Horizon is to cover at least 80% of the heating and cooling needs of the refurbished multifamilies or single or tertiary buildings, and demonstrating them up to TRL 7. The smaller objectives of these projects are to increase Sun Horizon heating and cooling technology performances, to promote the cloud-based functional monitoring, to reduce the heating and cooling technology CapEx and OpEx, which at the moment is found to be a limitation, to demonstrate the technological packages in different EU countries, and therefore to promote also the replication of the Sun Horizon across Europe, and afterwards to disseminate and create capacity building. And here you can see an overview of the technologies that we have included and we are installing as part of Sun Horizon projects. We have 3 heat pump technologies provided from Fahrenheit, an adsorption chiller. From BDR, we have a reversible heat pump, and from Boost Heat, we have a thermal compression heat pump. And then we have 2 main solar technologies developed as part of the projects, but 3 technologies, solar technologies installed. One is the high vacuum PVT panel, is a thermal, so water heating technology. We have a BDR solar and PV panel, which is not being further developed as part of the project. And then we have a dual sun PVT hybrid PV thermal panel. In all the technology packages, we also install a stratified thermal storage tank provided by Ratiotherm. In some cases, in technology package 4, we will see it afterwards, we have also a BDR thermal storage, which has not been further improved. These technologies combined together are needed to cover different needs. In some cases, only the space cooling, in some cases, space heating, in one case, pool heating, but mostly also domestic hot water. And here I have an overview of our demonstrations. We have 8 buildings across Europe. In particular, in Germany, we have 2 buildings, a multi-family building in Nuremberg and a single house in Berlin. We have a tertiary building, civic center in Spain, Sant Cugat, and we have a multi-family residential building in Madrid, a single house in Piera, Spain as well, 2 tertiary buildings in Verviers, Belgium, which are actually being replaced at the moment as we speak with a Romanian university, so social student accommodation. And then in Riga, Latvia, we have 2 single houses. So you will see that we have very different type of buildings where we will install 4 different technology packages. To see more in detail what are these 4 technology packages, we have prepared this small table. This table demonstrates not only how the technology packages are built, so what they're made of, but also their potential savings demonstrated in the buildings. The technology package 1 is built by combining the solar thermal technology with the thermal compression heat pump. They work in parallel, and the estimated savings for the Berlin demo set is of 43% primary energy, and in Verviers of 30% primary energy. Technology package 2 is composed by dual sun, that is the hybrid PVT, with Boost Heat. So it's a mixed solar assisted integration. And this technology package is installed in Nuremberg, where we foresee 33% primary energy savings, in Verviers with 25 primary energy savings, and in Riga with around 37 primary energy savings. Technology package 3 is built by the solar thermal technology plus the adsorption chiller technology. So it's only for cooling purposes. And in fact, we have installed in a tertiary building where the domestic hot water demand is not high, so we can skip that. And then we have technology package 4, which is mostly composed, in the case that we will present today, by BDR technologies. Here we have PVs combined with solar thermals combined with a reversible heat pump. And in Madrid, this combination demonstrates 76% of primary energy savings, while in Piera, the single house building in Spain, 59% primary energy saving. And then we have technology package 5, which is very complex, and it has been considered during the proposal phase too costly to be installed actually yet in some buildings. Therefore, it's only studied at simulation level. And the presentation today will revolve around 3 main demonstrators, which are the most advanced ones in our projects and that are already experienced, that have already completed their installation phase. And therefore, I will briefly explain also the challenges that they have witnessed. The first one will be the Riga, the Latvian houses, the 2 small houses. Then we will see Madrid, the social housing apartment block with 9 apartments. And then we will go to Sant Cugat, seeing the tertiary building. Speaking about the Riga houses, we see here, as you can see also by the pictures, we have 2 individual houses built in the early 2000s with a large surface, and both install the same technology package 2, which works by, as you can see in the schematic there, by having both the boosted heat pump, which is a gas-driven thermal compression heat pump to be used for the space heating and for the domestic hot water, plus the PVT technology, so the hybrid solar PV and thermal technology that assists both the boosted evaporators, so increasing their efficiency for preheating, as well as supply the electricity generated to the electrical appliances in the house. Together with this, we also have a stratified thermal storage provided by Ratiotherm, as we were saying before. And of course, all this is monitored by smart BMS technologies that the project also developed. And here you can see part of the installation, the space that each technology occupies. Starting from left, you can see the Oscar tank, which is the Ratiotherm storage tank. You can see some controls and heat exchangers, and then a boosted indoor unit, the boosted outdoor unit, as well as the panels that have been placed on the ground in the garden. The control and monitoring equipments, and again, some panels. And here is the installation in the other house, the Sunisi house, where a shed has been built on purpose for hosting all the equipment, because the house owners didn't have space enough. As you can see, there is a little shed of some around 10 square meters maybe. And we can see the PV panels installed on the roof of the shed, the boosted outdoor unit, the metering inside, the inverter, and all the other, the storage tank, in particular the black storage tank down there, and then the boosted indoor units. So you can see that the space that these technologies actually have occupy. And some of the technical and social difficulties and maybe risks that these house owners have experienced is related to several factors. One is that the technologies are still unknown in the Latvian markets, and therefore the installers have a limited experience with it. And we have heard in the previous presentation that this is also an important factor for replication. Also, the successful integration of controls has required some work and the active involvement of all the technology providers. We are speaking here of technologies under development, so they are not yet on the market, and it's understandable that we still need to do some work for a better control and integration of these different technologies. Also, a new challenge, another challenge is that they are provided by different technology providers. And then there is the familiarity and the precaution that the end users, so the residents, have towards these new technologies, especially when it comes to replacing the old familiar gas boiler, and especially in such a cold climates. And then the technologies packages, as we have seen, require much more space than a traditional technology. And therefore, maybe in some cases, we need to plan new sheds and solutions like we did in this case. The approval for the gas piping, the new gas piping installation is time consuming. That is something we have witnessed, but it could have been caused also by the COVID-19 pandemic time, because this installation happened in the last year and a half. So it could be done to that. But also, on the other hand, we've seen that the procedure for installing solar panels have been significantly facilitated. So it's taken less time than previously. And here we can see also an interface produced by the project where we can see the monitored information and also some user-friendly information that the user can easily access. And we move now to Madrid demo site. The Madrid demo site is a social housing in the center of Madrid, composed by 10 flats. It's not a standard social housing, it's a meet of an elite social housing building where there was already an ongoing project for the retrofitting of the facade and the roof. And so here what you see is actually post-retrofit, for post-envelope retrofit. The heated space is around 1,000 square meters, and previously to this to the upcoming of Sun Horizon project, they were heated by individual gas boilers. Then, thanks to the Sun Horizon project, we shift from the individual gas boiler to a centralized heating solution, which we call the technology package 4, which is composed by a reversible heat pump provided by BDR that provides both space heating, cooling, and domestic hot water, and the dual sun technology, providing thermal output to cover partially the demand of domestic hot water and heating when needed, but also supporting the boost BDR heat pump evaporator. And the electricity coming from the PVT technology is used to supply the appliances of the common spaces of the building. So here you see that the panels that we have managed to install are 50 square meters. The BDR technologies consist in 2 heat pumps. One is a brine water heat pump of 9 kilowatts, and the other one is an air-to-water heat pump of 27 kilowatts, then 2 tanks, 2 very large tanks, one of the 1,300 liter and then another one of 1,000 liter. I'm seeing also a question in the chat that says if you insulate properties, I may answer as part of, because it's very relevant for these demo sites. So no, the Sun Horizon project does not insulate homes, but in this case, in the Madrid demo site, there was already a plan to insulate the property. So as you can see exactly in this slide, you can see the comparison between the facade before and after, but we call this development here phase 1. And phase 1 is not strictly linked with Sun Horizon project. So they improve the envelope insulation, they improve the roof insulation, they substitute, replace the windows, and change location of the lift. But this is not being financed as part of our project. It is still relevant though, because this first renovation had an impact on our renovation by means of having to change the heating system distribution. And therefore, we moving from the centralized to the, sorry, so from the decentralized to the centralized, we have facilitated also the Sun Horizon project. I have only 5 minutes left, so I'm going to accelerate a bit. Here you can see some pictures of the internal installation. You can see the storage tank that is quite relevant when thinking of installing such technology packages in buildings. We have 2 tanks, as said, for a total of 2,300 liters. And the panels we installed on the roof. Here the challenge has been seen that there was a generalized material supply delay. The supply chain for raw materials has been challenged during the last couple of years, and the lack of experience of contractor has still been witnessed here as well. This has had an impact on the installation works timing and of the legalization of the electrical system, and therefore the process of contracting for an extensive power demand compared to previously. And here you can see that this demo site has actually provided a GHG emission savings of 71% compared to previously, and also a non-renewable primary energy savings of 87%. So this is an astonishing result for our project. Quickly going to the Civic Center of Sant Cugat, this is significant because it's a tertiary building in a very warm weather where we have installed the adsorption technology, adsorption heat pump, combined with solar thermal. So we use the heat coming from the thermal panels to activate the adsorption mechanism of 40 kilowatts and provide cooling. Very interesting demo site. We have been managing to install almost 200 square meters of solar thermal technologies and a total of almost 100 kilowatts of heat pump, replacing the traditional reversible heat pump that was installed earlier. So here you see some pictures of the installation. There are 2 levels of PVT, solar thermal technologies provided by TVP, a Swiss provider. The very large storage tank of 10,000 liters to act as a storage. You can see here the recooling system of the Fahrenheit technology, with some integration, and another internal tank for the cold water. The challenges here have been to, some budget deviations, of course, for renting up the cranes for such an extensive renovations, but also the installation of the heat exchanger has reduced the inlet temperature, and therefore we had to readjust a bit the system. The solar panels and the surface and distribution had to be adjusted in the roof. The different monitoring systems had to be also integrated, and we had to manage some civil works to move all these big technologies into the technical rooms. But the good part was also that we had enough space to install all these technical systems. Here there is the app, the feedback app developed as part of the Sun Horizon project, which is able to, where each of the users of the building is able to input their feeling of comfort, and therefore we can track how the users are feeling. And this is relevant. Why? Because this tertiary building has a lot of affluence. We have around 900 users per week and over 3,000 users per month. And the results that we got from these demo sites are actually a reduction of fossil fuel energy consumption, a reduction in noise, which has been quite appreciated by the users, and the reduction, of course, of greenhouse gas emissions. Still, we don't have quantitative information. Finally, last slide is an overview of these 3 demo sites. So you can see that in Latvia, we have installed TP2, which is more suitable for cold climates, and it can be surely applied to new and renovated buildings. It has a replication potential quite high because the single houses in Latvia constitute the 30% of the market, and 48 of them are connected to the gas grid. In Madrid, we have installed technology package 4, which is being a reversible heat pump is suited for all climates, and for sure it fits both renovated and new buildings, both residential and tertiary. In Sant Cugat is a tertiary buildings, mostly technology package 3, mostly fitted for sunny climates, so warm climates, because it produced cooling starting from a solar thermal generation, and replication potential in medium and large buildings, and of course new and renovated. That's all from my side. Thank you very much. Questions appreciated.
Thank you very much, Federica. We have to move on now to the next presentation. The next speaker is Andoni Hidalgo. He has a law degree from Deusto University in Bilbao, postgraduate on EU affairs from the Le Havre University in France, and a master's in political communications from Barcelona University. He has over 20 years of experience on EU public affairs, 17 of them spent in Brussels, where he worked for various industry associations in the field of environmental and energy efficiency policies. Since 2017 and back in his hometown, Bilbao, he has been working as the International Fair Advisor for the Basque Urban Agenda and has been managing the international communications for the OpenGela project. So now, Andoni, just to let you know, it's 15 minutes. The floor is yours.
It's fine. I hope I'm going to be quick. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect. So let's hope that I have this control over the slides, which is the case. Good. Thank you very much for the invitation to speak in this very interesting event. I've been listening very carefully to the previous presentations. It's a fantastic opportunity to learn a lot and to absorb a lot of knowledge about other brother and sister projects going on in other parts of Europe. So that's great. So I'm gonna tell you about the OpenGela project, which is I'm gonna be speaking about the OpenGela project, but as well the OpenGela model, because actually departing from OpenGela project, which is a Horizon 2020 funded project, we are aiming to develop a model for integral people-centric urban regeneration in the region, in the Basque region and farther away. So the Horizon 2020 OpenGela project is a CSA, so it didn't require specifically participation from international partners. Nevertheless, we have a couple of international partners, FEDEREN, which is one of the organizers of this webinar, and then Housing Europe, because as you will see, our project is very much centered into social housing and into vulnerable neighborhoods and consumers. So just to give a frame for this, for where this project is being developed, it's been developed initially within the Basque region, which is quite a small territory, very, very densely populated, where the connection between urban and rural areas is quite diffuminated, I would say. A lot of municipalities, 3 main capitals, but as well a lot of smaller municipalities. some of which will be as well joining the OpenGala model. This OpenGala project has been initially been implemented in 2 pilot sites, one in Bilbao in Charcoaga neighborhood, and the other one in Eibar in Gipuzkoa nearby. So as I say, this feature about the territory is quite important because our model is going to be initially stated in these 2 pilot sites, but disseminated in a number of other smaller municipalities. So the other interesting feature under which you will have to take this project into account is that it's been led by the Basque government, which has quite a high degree of policy-making autonomy, indeed, in the various aspects such as energy, housing, etc., etc. So this is something that I mean the ability to state our own priorities at the regional level is quite an important feature for that. And then the other important element that we need to take into account is the characteristics of the building stock. Obviously, as it is the case in many other parts of Europe, our building stock is very, very old. It's over 40 years of average age. There's an extremely high percentage as opposed to other realities that Federica, for instance, told us about Latvia. Here, a massive amount of homes are privately owned, and the majority of them are multifamily buildings, which states the difference between, for instance, with national realities, as the case that was previously mentioned in Ireland. We will be working in this project with privately owned houses and multifamily buildings mostly. Okay. Another interesting feature is that this project obviously is about improving energy and energy efficiency in buildings, but as well, a lot of focus is being put on improving the accessibility of buildings. Obviously, taking into account that we are working with multifamily buildings, the lack of accessibility in these higher rise buildings is important. So we are acting a lot on that. Okay. This is to say that energy efficiency is, of course, the guest star in the kind of works that we are undertaking, but we have noticed that it is not the main trigger for convincing home owners in order to undertake building renovation. So this is something that is a reality check from which most of our building renovation activities have to take off. So this is to say there are many other triggers to be taken into account. Okay. Another element to be taken into consideration that we have departed these actions for integral home renovation services based on a very deep social diagnosis made of our territory. There was an initial diagnosis made in 2012, which was remade again in 2020, sorry, in which we concluded that 31% of the population is living in district which could be classified as vulnerable or very vulnerable, with a high proportion as well, relatively high proportion of population in risk of energy poverty. And last but not least, we have this demographic challenge in which obviously, as it is the case in some other countries in our continent, we have a high amount of a population which is higher than 65-year-old. Life expectancy is quite high, so we are going to reach to over a third of the population which is older than 65-year-old by 2050. So this is the reality from which we are departing, and in which our projects have been developed. So what are we doing in OpenGala? First, a linguistic precision. Open, it's a known Gala. It's a word for room in the Basque language. So it's literally open rooms. What we are doing is opening in the 2 pilot projects district-based one-stop shops, offices, physical offices based in the neighborhoods that are being regenerated. You'll see on the right side a picture of a Charcoaga neighborhood in in Bilbao, and on the right side of Eibar neighborhood of the Chonta neighborhood in Eibar, sorry. And so the key of the key element of this project is that we are actually accompanying homeowners throughout the integral home renovation journey from the start, from the minute zero until the end. And we are doing this by opening these physical offices in the neighborhoods and employing an average of 3 people there, which are technical advisors providing first technical advice about the works that will be undertaken, advice as well on social matters, because these are people working in the neighborhoods from a long time ago, and they know very well the typology of inhabitants of the neighborhoods. So they know all kind of problems that they might be facing, as well administrative staff in order to help homeowners and inhabitants with their paperwork, as well advising technical and regulatory issues, and advice as well, as I will underline later on financing perspective. So all the possible financing tools that might be accessible to homeowners and inhabitants are put at their disposal. This is made, as I said, this project is being led by the regional government, and this is an important element because this project is a part of the urban agenda for the Basque Country, which is an overarching strategy developed by the regional government, very much linked as well with the regional strategy for implementing the Sustainable Development Goals. So this is a holistic perception of home integral renovation services, not only, as I said, influencing or taking into account energy matters, but as well some other elements such as the reduction of inequalities, gender equality, partnership, public-private and public partnerships in order to develop the projects more efficiently. So this is part of this has been inserted as this Open Gala model as the integral regional policies in order to achieve sustainable development. So this is another important element to be taken into account. But as I said, it's departing from 2 pilot projects, but it has the aim to be replicated not only at the regional scale, but national scale as well, and the EU scale in the future. We have nowadays 4 more municipalities willing to join the project that have actually joined the Open Gala model, and another 12, so to a total of 17 other municipalities joining that will join the Open Gala model. Okay. Now, which kind of interventions are we targeting? Obviously, we are mixing non-energy and energy measures. So we are obviously in the energy measures, we're focusing on the building envelope, starting from passive renovation measures, insulation. We are aiming to achieve at least 70% energy performance improvement, but as well having some other elements such as heaters, change of windows, etc., etc. And as well, we are stating a lot on non-energy measures. For instance, we're installing in high-rise buildings, we're installing lifts, and we are improving accessibility. This is a result, obviously, of the diagnosis of the type of the typology of the buildings and the typology of the population. If we are having grandmothers living alone in the 5th floor with no lift, obviously the first point of interest for them is going to be install a lift in my building, and then we combine these measures, of course, with some other energy measures. The range of investments vary to a high degree, between 5,000 and 70,000 euros, depending on the renovation depth, the size, the intervention typology, of course, and likewise for the monthly payment capacity. It's depending on the social diagnosis that we are undertaking and the economic level of the inhabitants. It goes from a small amount to bigger amounts monthly. Okay, but this is of course made case by case, building by building, based on the social diagnosis that we are undertaking from our deep knowledge of the neighborhoods in which we are intervening. Okay. Now, financing, of course, it has been mentioned before, it will be mentioned again. We are very much on the opinion that it is an issue, of course, but it is not the only one. Obviously, it is a barrier to deep building renovation and urban regeneration, because you must not forget that within the OpenGala model, the building regeneration measures come together to some of the wider urban regeneration activities. Okay, and obviously, we are addressing just the pure building renovation. There is a need for high initial investment in vulnerable areas. There's a lot as well, a non-financing issue, which is the lack of awareness. This has been mentioned before by Stephen in the Super Homes program in Ireland. Obviously, there's a lot in the OpenGala's and the OpenGala model to be made about education and awareness raising of inhabitants about the benefits of building renovation, not only on the energy, not only on energy bills, but as well on the improvement of health conditions for internal air quality, and as well some other kind of benefits wider than these merely energy savings ones. As well, we find a lot of critical mass, lack of critical mass for projects. Obviously, this is being remediated by the combination of measures of interventions in buildings with some other kind of interventions in the neighborhoods. But what we are noticing is that there is a lot of difficulties for banks to provide long-term finance to those who lack of financial capacity, and I will insist on that in the following slides. But nevertheless, we are facing a reality in which, for a number of reasons, obviously not only the Green Deal and the subsequent renovation wave, but as well recent international events have reminded us how important it is to achieve energy independence in the European Union. We are departing from a region, the Basque region, which has over 93% of energy dependence from exports. So this is, I mean, just avoiding energy wastage in a massively inefficient buildings should be the first step in order to achieve those greater political goals. And this has made that the integral urban regeneration is the cornerstone of energy and green transition policies. But it's not only about green transitions, but as well demographic transition and as well just transition. So this is why we are focusing on vulnerable neighborhoods. Okay. So financing.
I'm sorry, Antoni.
Yeah.
Can I like we are running out of time?
Yeah.
Can I ask you to?
I'm gonna go
accelerate
through the last 3 slides. Okay.
I'm really sorry. But...
No problem. No problem. It's fine.
Thank you.
So what we are focusing now is on providing a building renovation scheme with the adequate long-term, I mean, with the adequate timing, okay, lower interest rates and not so high monthly quotas, because obviously this is not just an environmental policy failure, but as well a market failure, because not adequate financing is provided, and this leads to a long-term social failure. So what we are trying to provide is a formula, which is the MAS formula, the additional mechanism for social support, which tries to provide easiness, affordability, and fairness. Okay, so this is led by the OpenGala Foundation with a number of partners, and obviously we are trying to address the highest percent of the population here in the middle, which actually cannot have access to standard personal loan from banks. So this is not just the population here on the left, which has households in extreme conditions, which will need financing with long-term loans, but the population in the middle here, which incomes are too low to address ordinary bank loans, but currently they can only access subsidies from other kind of, I mean, very badly conditioned predatory credits. So this is the population that we are addressing with our system. And how are we doing this? By combining existing loans provided from the regional government with the OpenGala assistance, which has been based on some other financing mechanism, which has been proved applied with success, such as the Oladomus project with the Europace mechanism, which has been integrated within the OpenGala system, and which provides longer-term financing of for 15 years, which, in addition to existing loans from the Basque regional government, could lead to a coverage of up to 100%, with a certain type of conditions, of course, but the loans have to be refundable in 10 years, and in case the apartment is sold before there, they have to be refinanced. Okay, so very quickly, these benefits of this mechanism, they covered up to 100% of the project. No link to life insurance of similars, no cancellation fee, payment deadlines is longer, and the nominal interest rate is variated between depending on the energy efficiency improvement and the ambition of the renovation. And just to finalize, the 5 key messages to be provided by them, not just financing, but as well some other elements, is that what we have learned with our project is that it has to be part of something else. It's just not just buildings, but it has to be intrinsically linked to neighborhood regeneration. Obviously, for that, not only regional governments have been implicated, but as well provincial and municipal authorities and multi-stakeholder with the contractors and the private sector also on board. As well, communication is key with the accompaniment to the homeowners is absolutely essential, and the trust building by having an open room in the neighborhoods. That's what we have found that is absolutely critical to the success of the project, because it's a non-institutional place to neighbors to come, ask questions, and be in full trust that somebody is helping them all along the process. Okay. And obviously, the coverage of the regional authorities has been found as well as a matter of trust, not only for consumers, but as well for the contractors and for the municipalities. So that's all.
So thank you very much, Andoni. I'm sorry I had to cut short your presentation. Unfortunately, we don't really have time for questions because we have to move on to the last presentation of the day. However, I want to invite the audience, if you have questions or if you would like to engage further with the speakers, to just contact them directly. I'm sure they will be glad to answer to your doubts. And now, okay, let's move on to the last speaker of the day. Daniela Wagner is a project advisor in the Life Energy and Life Climate unit in CINEA. Her main fields of activity within CINEA are project development assistance, energy efficiency finance, and energy efficient services. Her main tasks are to support projects in achieving their objectives and guide them throughout the project implementation. So Daniela, whenever you're ready, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Irene, and hello to all of you. Given the already advanced timing, I will focus on the call topics which we are having now under our Live Clean Energy Transition portfolio, let's say, because many of the policy framework slides I have presented, Irene, I cannot move on the slides right now. Here it is. Okay, so the policy context has already been touched upon by my previous speakers in their excellent presentations, which you have heard this morning. So I don't want to go into detail. The only thing which is clear is that to achieve a carbon neutral economy by 2050 as part of, which is the main target of the European Green Deal, we have to focus on buildings, and therefore the renovation wave strategy has been presented by the European Commission, focusing on the renovation of 35 million buildings within the next until 2030, within the next 8 years now anymore. And therefore, the focus has to lie on guidance and support not only to public authorities for the public buildings, but also mainly to private homeowners, which also have to do their contribution in terms of renovation of buildings. And they, of course, have a much higher need to receive guidance, not only in terms of advice and information, but really hands-on guidance through the whole renovation process. So which we call integrated home renovation services. I will skip the next slide. So my main focus will be the Live Clean Energy Transition sub-program with a focus on grants. So other than the ELENA program, which was presented by Luis before, here the Live CET program supports the beneficiaries through grants for projects, for specific project activities. And I will take out two which we have in this portfolio, which is the support for integrated home renovation services, and then shortly present also project development assistance to you. The reason is that these are the ones which directly address building renovation. So what you have heard before in these different presentations already is that it's crucial to provide assistance to building owners, both on the public sector, but also mainly in the residential sector. And for the residential sector, the very specific aspect is that it's individuals who have to make the decisions and who finally have to make the investments. And I can tell you from my own experience, and also that from my colleagues, which have been working for many years in that topic, in that sector, focusing on building renovation. When it comes to the actual implementation of the renovation of our apartments, our buildings, it's really tricky to go through the process alone, to get the right contractors, to arrange all the works which are necessary, all the different types of contractors. So therefore, a guidance through this whole customer journey is crucial. And therefore, what we offer is a grant topic called Home Reno, Integrated Home Renovation Service, which is really focusing on the establishment of one-stop shops, which guide the homeowners through the whole renovation process, from the initial advice to the implementation and quality management of the actual renovation activities. So to really take them along the individual steps and help them to achieve a high quality, highly ambitious renovation of residential buildings. Mainly the focus here is on this setup of the one-stop shop with all the individual parts which are necessary, with inclusion or with a special focus on the communication. Stephen has mentioned before the importance of communication towards the homeowners, but also a focus on the financials. So also including or addressing somehow financial services. You have seen it in a couple of these examples, which we heard this morning, that the financing is crucial and very important to the homeowners, especially when it comes to vulnerable households. So to people who are suffering from energy poverty and so on. So therefore, also in that call, here we look at projects that address the financial aspects and come up with solutions for financing and for supporting homeowners in financing their renovations. The second, here down at the very bottom of the slide, I have included the link to the call topic on the funding and tender portal of the European Commission, so you can have a more detailed look on that topic. The second one, here you see still the examples. So we have heard from a couple of them this morning. We have a large portfolio of experience from setup of one-stop shops through this dedicated program. Here you can see some of them. But now I would like to just mention briefly the second call topic, which is more focused on the implementation of a project portfolio. So it's the pendant to what you have heard from Luis before in the ELENA program. We also have a a similar instrument, which is called Project Development Assistance, and it's aiming at really gathering the expertise in an organization to implement investments into energy efficiency and sustainable energy. Our focus is on a smaller size, let's say. So we focus on project portfolio, which range from 7.5 to 23 million euros. So it's kind of the smaller sister of the ELENA program. But in that case, it's a grant funding. So you apply with a project proposal for a specific grant to develop your project portfolio. We also have a leverage factor required here. So we ask the beneficiaries to actually implement investments during the project duration with a factor of 1 to 15. So 15 million euros of investments for each million euro of grant. And in case it targets only residential buildings, it's again a leverage factor of 1 to 10. So 10 million euros investment in residential for 1 million euro of grants. I am happy to say that I was involved, or my colleagues were involved in the Superhomes 2030 project, also in the Open Gala project, and in the House Invest project, which you have heard before. All great examples for what can be set up with the help of these European grants. Again, you have here the link to more information on the funding and tender portal. And actually, I don't want to go into very much more detail because time has run out. You will receive these slides afterwards, I suppose, so you have an access to all these further sources to have a look at the details. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much. And yeah, Daniela, you're right. We will send the slides so everyone can have access to all these little resources. So yeah, I just would like to thank everyone for joining us today. I would like, of course, to invite you if you like this event, or if you would like to learn more about other events or get to know more about EHPA, I invite you to follow us in our different social media and our different links. You can even scan the QR code on the screen. And that's it. I just want to thank all the speakers for their super interesting presentations. I wish we had more time to discuss because it was a very interesting event, at least it was for me. Maybe in another time we organize a whole session, just a whole day with you all, but that we will have to see. But yeah, I just want to wish you all a lovely rest of the day and see you soon in other events.